Thank you. We have to speed up a little bit, so we have one last question there.
Philippe Chalmin, University Paris Dauphine. My question will be a bit linked to Mr. Badinter. 164 years ago, the European equivalent of Tahrir Place was just here in front of the Hofburg. It was the Spring of Nations. King Louis-Philippe lost his throne, and here Metternich lost his throne, and we had the first German parliament and so on. 6 months later, everything was over. Do you think it will be different this time?
Thank you very much. I think I take the row from the far end again. We have a couple of minutes left, and if you all are rather brief, we will manage it before Amr Moussa has to leave. And we want him, of course, to answer some of the questions. You don't all have to go into all of the questions, but I guess, Christophe, you will have to say something on energy security, certainly.
Well, I was interested by one of the comments on, it's true that when you, and it's true, we are facing revolution, and I absolutely agree with what Minister Badinter said. We are faced with revolution, and we don't know always what the end will be, and I was saying this in my paper, and sometimes it's not even with those who started that you end, and those who started are sometimes out of the system. But I mean, to come back to your point, and I remember the question was, I mean, is there a system in place to replace the former one, or do we have to make it larger at the level of a parliament like the European Parliament? Well, I mean, I don't think that the example of European Parliament today is the best, but I mean, I don't think, again, that it is a real question. To come back on what has been said, there is already organizations which are working, plus or minus, but they exist. We have been talking about Arab League. We are talking about the GCC countries. It works. The GCC country works very well for the security and for the security of access to energy. But I don't think today I would like too much to speak on, okay, we are all interested by Arab Spring because we are scared about security of energy. For me, it will be the last thing to do is to be interested by what's happening in Syria, what's happening in Libya, because we are concerned about access to oil and gas. Even if it has to be taken into account. It has to be taken into account as, okay, can you maneuver the same way? And I'm saying this in front of Prince Turkey. He knows what I mean. Can you do it the same way in Saudi Arabia or in Tunisia? The answer is no. Why? Because, I mean, it's not exactly the same problems. And then you have, in any case, to take into account the security of supply. Cannot be the first reason, but not to say it exists. Not to say that behind all of those nice things, there are things which are pragmatism, which are the world, because it cannot be only considered at the Arab level. It's a question of everybody. Today we are in a world, we like it or not, which is called the world. And it's nothing to do with being a capitalist or being a communist or being an Arab. We are part of a global system. And this global system needs to be controlled in a way which is to take into account the security of supply, but not of X, Y, or Z, of everybody. I have to say this from time to time, and again, it's difficult because it's giving a feeling again that we say this because of it's my business. No, it's not because it's my business, because it is my responsibility. And our responsibility to tell people, okay, you can do this, but that will be the impact. I love that somebody bring the Iran subject into the subject, because Iran is not an Arab country, but it is in the Middle East. And the only real debate will be the Persian Gulf versus the Arab Gulf. I don't think that will end with something of very much interest. But what is of interest is, what is the role of Iran playing? What's the role of Iran playing with Syria? Why is Iran going to take and lift crude when the others cannot? Not because they like the crude, because they want to help a country which is facing what they consider as their own enemies. And I could give you a lot of examples like this. And I will make, in fact, a statement. It will not be an answer. One statement. It's good to say something now. But what happened, for instance, with Syria? What happened with Syria? Syria was asked, and we know this, it's in all the press, was asked by a certain country of the western part of the world to help to find a solution for the Hezbollah and Iran, and they failed. And I ask you, and I'm asking a question to everybody, they started not to be any more acceptable this day. It's not an answer, but with a question, I think I'm part of the answer.
Thank you very much. I know that Amr Moussa has to catch a plane, so I give you the floor first. Amr.
Well, thank you very much. You are right, sir, in raising the issue of Iran, and any discussion of our region should not ignore the important element of the Iran policy. I happen to believe that the change which is taking place in the Arab world is also taking place in the Middle East, in the region as a whole, and it will affect Iran as it will affect the rest. Already certain geopolitical developments are taking place, and Syria and around Syria, and this affects Iran, etc. Therefore, Iran will be in the center of the Middle Eastern change. Is the Middle East going, or the countries like Tunis and Egypt are going the Turkish way or the Iranian way? Well, I believe that for countries like Egypt or Tunis to copy the Iranian model, it will be very, very difficult. It is not so. The societies, the thinking, the religious principles, political inclination do not lead to that. The Turkish model is much nearer. You know, the soft approach by Turkey and rough approach by Iran to the situation in the Middle East has created a kind of compensation for the role Egypt used to play. But the return of Egypt to the Middle East arena, active arena, is very important, because the Arab world will not accept the leadership of either country, neither Turkey nor Iran. The Arab leadership is for an Arab country to assume. We welcome very much the Turkish role. We are comfortable with them. Their model is in our minds, but our model will be different. We disagree with Iran on many issues, but we see, or many of us see, that the solution or the way to solve those differences is to sit and have a serious dialogue with the Iranians, raising all the issues and points of difference on how to solve the Middle East, the Palestinian question, on the nuclear issue, on the relations with the Gulf countries, on etc. There are so many things Iran will have to be talked to seriously by the Arabs. For women, President Mary Robinson, and thank you very much for the question. I leave it to Prince Turkey to answer, but no, don't worry about that. Our societies do respect women. We understand the trends, the conservative, the ultra-conservative trends, but those are just trends and not overwhelming attitudes. I am among those who believe that we are going to move to the future, bearing in mind that we have other different opinions, but this will be the work of democracy, and how we discuss with each other and counter that. Here, the Arab League role will be very important. The collective management of the issue will be very essential. The energy security, sir, it is part of the thinking of our need for a new order with economic issues, with the energy policy that is part of the economic scene and part of the economic situation in the region. And I don't think they are really threatened, the energy security, provided that no country in the Middle East tend to play havoc with the situation and goes into launching wars or following an adventurous policy. This thing will have to be stopped, otherwise the energy security will not only be threatened, it will go down the drain.